Last time in the world of Call of Cthulhu, Professor Dakota Jones, Doctor of Archaeology at Miskatonic University, put together a team consisting of Theodore Henderson, a former Army surgeon turned speakeasy owner, his bouncer and war buddy, Mad Jeb Hargrove, a giant of a man whose height and weight are exceeded only by his war trauma and alcoholism, and Yorf Yorkinson, a crackpot patron of the Rusty Anchor who had been listening in on their conversation and decided to invite himself along for the ride, believing aliens must certainly somehow be involved. When they arrived at the university the next day to retrieve details of their task from Professor McTavish, former Boston Chief of Police Professor Herman Braun was waiting to join them. Professor McTavish told the group that Henry Rhodes had been on an expedition to prove he had determined the location of the local legend of Cade's Rest. Over 3 months ago, he suddenly sent the students assisting him back to the university, sending a letter stating he would be back soon after wrapping up some final matters. That was his last correspondence. Ted Henderson, the barman, realized in a twist of fate he himself had amputated Henry Rhodes' leg during the war. The group questioned Professor McTavish before moving on in their investigation, though not before Yorf swiped a pre-prohibition bottle of whiskey. After searching the library, the group went to Henry Rhodes' office. Between the two locations, they discovered more information on the legends of Cade's Rest. Professor Braun, searching for some sort of concealed department in Professor Rhodes' desk, thought he found a switch and pulled blind. A gunshot rang out, the switch having actually been the trigger of Professor Rhodes' service revolver from the war. The gunshot went through the wall into the office of McTavish, shattering his collection of alcohol and leaving him questioning his decision to request help from these people. The group then questioned Mary and Clarence, two of the 3 students from the expedition, under the pretext that they were putting together the report on the expedition because Professor Rhodes and his wife were still recovering from illness at home. Finding Clarence to have some sort of affliction of the mind, the group pressured him into drinking the previously stolen whiskey, which seemed to make him more willing to talk. Professor Jones recovered a strange amulet engraved with a 3-headed goat that Clarence had brought back from the expedition. Jebediah, meanwhile, helped himself to the plate of cold food in front of Clarence. The group then questioned Mary, while Professor Braun spoke with his twin daughters, Evelyn and Harriet. Telling them he was going on vacation and not taking them, they guilted him into giving them money to have a spa day. From Mary and Clarence, the group learned the expedition had been having initial success when Henry Rhodes suddenly decided to send them home, claiming he had found evidence to dismiss his theories when he had gone into the hills alone, with dynamite. The group also learned some local farmers had been threatening the expedition, with Mary suspecting they might have been the real reason Professor Rhodes had sent them home. Satisfied, the group traveled across town to the dilapidated house of the 3rd student, Walter Gehrig, who had withdrawn from university to take care of his ailing mother. Being invited inside, the group noticed Walt was extremely emaciated, his clothes several sizes too large, and draping over him. The group also noticed dozens of books covering every surface of his living room, all focused on the topics of dreams, mythology, and psychology. This concerned Professor Jones, who had previously known Walt to be an extremely serious and gifted student with no interest in these topics. After some fruitless questioning, Ted offered to examine his mother, explaining that he had medical training. Walt said he would ask his mother if she would be okay with it, then dismissed himself to take food to her. The group investigated the kitchen, where they found the soup on the stove to be old and somewhat congealed despite being hot. Despite the questionable quality of the soup, both Yorf and Jebediah helped themselves to bowls. When Walt returned, the group noticed the food he brought back had been untouched and entirely congealed, as well as slightly moldy. He agreed to allow them to see his mother. The group followed him up the stairs to the room, Ted taking the lead behind Walt. As he entered the room and Walt spoke to his mother, Ted realized the bed was empty and the room covered in dust. The group became unnerved, with Yorf and Jeb leaving to look around the house. Ted attempted to convince Walt to go back downstairs to talk with him about his diagnosis. With Walt confused, asking why they had to leave the room to discuss it, Ted remarked his diagnosis was that it appeared Walt's mother had sustained a full-body amputation. As Walt became increasingly confused and agitated, Ted put the pieces together using his limited psychological knowledge, along with his medical background. Although he couldn't diagnose him, Walt was clearly suffering from extremely severe psychiatric delusions. It would take professional help to get through to him. To make matters worse, his weight suggested he was eating little if anything, and untreated he would likely soon starve himself to death. Excusing himself briefly to discuss this with Professor Jones, Ted reasoned that if they could calm Walt down, they might be able to get the information they were seeking before reaching out to professionals to have him committed. The group convinced him to return to the living room, and managed to calm him down somewhat. He repeated much of what the other two students had told them, but was also able to offer more information on the farmers who had threatened them. First, he explained, they had been extremely aggressive about coming anywhere close to their farm. He remembered that near their farm, there was a very strong scent, not unlike that of a town with a large bakery. Second, he was able to confirm their farmers were brothers, with the surname Carmody.